I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle tonight from Washington. President Trump is once again highlighting the real crisis at our border and the need for a wall, as Democrats show no signs of working with him or compromising to this end of getting the government back in operation, at least 25% of it. Univision anchor Jorge Ramos says the wall is a symbol of hate and racism. I'll debate him exclusively in moments. And then I'm going to talk to two people on the front lines of this crisis about the challenges that they confront daily. They're real. And you guys have to check this out. This is a California TV station that says it was snubbed by CNN because of their honest reports on the border wall, meaning the KUSI. And its reporter at the center of the controversy will join us exclusively with that story. And CNN did respond. We'll bring that to you. Plus, flying the friendly skies, well, could get a little bit more expensive, as one airline is encouraging tipping. And while The Sopranos turns 20, its creator is revealing new details about that ending that vexed so many. Raymond Arroyo has it all in Friday Follies. But first, President Trump raising the alarm today about the real crisis at the border with some of his strongest language yet. The president hosted a border security roundtable, and he insists that Congress step up and fund the wall now.
They're incredible people, the federal employees that we're talking about. But many of them agree with what I'm saying and what the people in this room who are experts are saying. They don't want to see people killed because we can't do a simple border structure. And I appreciate their incredible support. But Congress should do this. This is too simple. It's too basic. And Congress should do this. If they can't do it, if at some point they just can't do it, this is a 15-minute meeting. If they can't do it, I will declare a national emergency. I have the absolute right to do it.
Now, despite that, the liberal media says, well, they're not backing down from their own opposition to any border wall, barrier, fence, whatever you want to call it. Univision anchor, an old friend, Jorge Ramos, writes in a new op-ed, quote, Mr. Trump's wall is a symbol of hate and racism, and it would be completely useless, and it doesn't address any national emergency. Jorge joins me now. It's great to see you, Jorge. We have a bit of a delay, so everybody has to bear with each other, but Border Patrol agents, including President Obama's Border Patrol chief, says that walls work. That's what they're saying. And now, it's not a matter of hate, but protecting Americans, so more don't die at the hands of people who are here illegally, and that it keeps those who are trying to cross the border safe from trafficking and all the other things that befall them. Now, what's racist, Jorge, about protecting innocent people, both on the other side of the border and those who are here in the United States?
I'll get to that. Let me just first address about the wall being completely useless. Almost 45% of all undocumented immigrants coming to this country come by plane or with a visa. So a wall right now would be completely useless. There's no national emergency. National emergency was 9/11. National emergency was after the war in Iraq. That's when most of the 700 miles of wall that we have right now, that's a national emergency. What we have right now is not a national emergency. The border communities are among the safest in the country. The number of arrests are among the lowest in the last 20 years, and the undocumented population has remained stable for the last 10 years.
Well, that's not what you thought back in 2006, though, is it? I mean, 2006 in the Washington Post in March, you wrote the following: every minute an immigrant crosses the border illegally, and that, I agree, is an enormous threat to the United States. Enormous threat is what you wrote. It is in the best interest of the United States in terms of national security to know who is here and who is coming in. That's your language. And President Obama, and we'll play this, basically agreed with your assessment of where the country was then. And let's hear what he's had to say.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country.
Jorge, what's changed?
That was 9/11. That was after 9/11. Well, nothing really has changed. I mean, what we have seen is that the number of undocumented immigrants coming to this country, in the year 2000, it was more than 1 million every single year. And now we are among we have some of the lowest numbers of arrests in the last 20 years. So
yeah, but
something
Jorge,
has
we got
been
family
working.
members crossing. We have children dying. We have 27,518 family members who were arrested. That's up 240% from last December. At that point, there was only 8,120 arrests of family units, and that's including little children who are being dragged across the desert. How is that good?
I'm not saying it's good. What I'm saying, this is a crisis created also by President Trump. We have right now thousands and thousands of families on the Mexican side, mostly in Tijuana.
Now you're saying it's a crisis.
Who are trying to apply for political asylum, and because of President Trump's policies, only a few of them are processed every single day. How is that not a crisis created by President Trump? Now, there is not a crisis along the border enough to merit new walls. That's exactly what I'm saying. How come then we have some of the safest communities on this side of the border? This is not 9/11. This is a manufactured crisis created by President Trump.
Well, I think there's a big business in bringing people across the border. You've talked about it. I mean, the cartels, the coyotes, they make millions of dollars, thousands of dollars per poor migrant crossing the border.
But where is the crisis, Laura? I think maybe that's the real point. I mean, where is the crisis? Where do you see the crisis?
I'll tell you what the crisis is. Just one.
To give money from national disaster to this.
Yeah, you follow all of this, and you report on so much of this daily. And I mean, I'm not patronizing. You're a really smart person. You've been all over the world. You've interviewed world leaders. So when these facts pop up, you know, this is just the Texas issue. This is between 2011 and 2018, the Texas numbers. They booked 186,000 illegal aliens for a total of 292,000 crimes. Now, is this a crisis? 539 murders, 32,000 assaults, including 3,426 sexual assaults, almost 3,000 weapons
so don't criminalize
charges.
Immigrants,
That's not I mean, that sounds like a crisis to me in one state.
It is not a crisis. I mean, the people, the immigrants who commit crimes here do not represent the vast majority of immigrants. You and I know perfectly well, and your audience knows perfectly well, that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes, and immigrants are less likely to be behind bars. So
that's
don't
conflating
criminalize
illegal and legal, though. You can't conflate both.
Even undocumented immigrants.
I want legal immigration.
Even
I want
undocumented
legal
immigrants
immigration.
are
Love
not
legal
criminals.
immigrants.
Nobody wants undocumented immigration. Nobody wants that, not even undocumented immigrants. That's the only way to solve this problem. But just to create a crisis, to spend $5 billion on a wall that we don't need, it is completely absurd.
Right. What about the families?
President Trump is afraid of you guys at Fox News. That is what's happening right now. He's afraid of your criticism. He's afraid of your colleagues, and he's creating a crisis simply because he needs to deliver on a wall that might not be built before 2020.
That's a nice thought that we have all this influence. However, real people are suffering badly, and I spend, as you know, I've spent a lot of time in Central America and Guatemala and Salvador. Not so much in Mexico, but in Central America. I know it really well. There's an enormous amount of suffering, enormous amount of corruption. There's also an enormous amount of suffering in the United States. And I want to play, this is a family who joined us last night. Their son, Pierce, was killed just about a week or so ago, hit by an illegal immigrant driver head on. Let's watch them.
This is our son. This was Pierce Corcoran. He is dead. His death is real. His death is real. It's not fabricated. And he died at the hands of an illegal immigrant.
Those families feel like they're in crisis. If I lost a child, I couldn't even get up in the morning. I don't know how parents can even, whether it's by gunshot or by kidnapping or whatever it is. But this is happening, and it's happened repeatedly, not just murder but you know, DUI, all sorts of other things. So it's a family crisis for a lot of people, and a lot of the people suffering, Jorge, are legal Hispanic immigrants. They're suffering.
I do understand, and I cannot even imagine, as a father, I cannot even imagine the pain that they are suffering because of their loss. I really cannot even imagine that. Now, we cannot generalize that, Laura, and that's the problem. We cannot criminalize all the undocumented immigrants for what one person did or what a few people did. We cannot do that. This is exactly what President Trump is doing in his last speech. He again criminalized all immigrants, and he's creating this fear, making sure that people think that unless we do something and build his wall, that things are going to change. I mean, of course, I cannot condone what happened to that family. Of course not. But we have to understand that what happened in that incident does not represent the vast majority of immigrants in this country.
Of course not. Not everybody in the neighborhood where there's gang activity is guilty of gang activity, but the gang members have to be punished, and you have to look at overall policing priorities to see if they're actually putting the resources in the neighborhood. So it's kind of a bit of a false dichotomy to analyze it by that. But people who do know a lot more than I do, and probably know more than you do, who are on the border, do assess the situation on a daily basis. Mark Napier, and he is the Pima County Sheriff, big border town and border area in Arizona. He said the following in a very interesting interview. Let's watch.
It is a public safety crisis, not only from drug trafficking, but human trafficking, and the victimization of migrants at the hands of bandits and coyotes is also a public safety issue. And there is an underlying national security concern here. More cocaine is coming into this country. We're having overdoses every day. And that's not the president being dramatic. That's happening in my community. I know this is true.
What about the drugs? I've talked a lot about China sending fentanyl here and what a scourge that is. But what about the drug cartels that are using these pathways for illegal narcotics?
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because what he was saying is false. I mean, of course, we have a problem with drugs, but guess what? Most of the seizures that we get here in this country are done at legal points of entry, not throughout the border. And then so we're, again, President Trump and many people are trying to create the idea that all these drugs are coming through along the U.S.-Mexico border, and that is not true. Through legal points of entry.
Right, but cartels aren't showing up and saying,
as long as you have more than 28 million.
I mean, they're
but as long as you have more than 28 million Americans using illegal drugs, this is the largest market in the world.
Americans here? I mean,
narcos in Mexico and Colombia and Central America, they're going to be sending that now. Along the border, we have some of the safest communities. So if what he's saying is true, how come out of the 9 members of Congress who represent districts along the U.S.-Mexico border, how come not a single one of them support the wall that President Trump's wants?
Well, there's a huge
they know what's happening at the border, right?
I think there's been a huge demographic change.
But they know what's happening at the border, so they don't support this.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And
so they don't support that.
Yeah, the demography has changed, but the people disperse. It's not like all 12 million people live in the border towns. They disperse in North Carolina, and they're in Fairfax County, Virginia. I mean, they're all over the country. Just one other statistic, though, Jorge.
They're safe communities, really safe communities.
Well, I'm not sure if a lot of people in our business live in McAllen, Texas on a daily basis, but there are a lot of great people and a lot of the border communities. But there are other facts that are relevant, and I want to close with one. This is a statistic from our federal prisons today. So illegal immigrants, let's say they're anywhere from 7 to 12 million people. It's unclear. We don't really have a good number. But 23% of federal inmates are illegal immigrants, committing a wide variety of crimes. They're not entry into the country, multiple entries. These are violent crimes. 23%? And we don't need to do a better job. These aren't students overstaying their visas for the most part. These are people crossing our borders.
Yeah, well, I think that the Hispanic population is about 20%. Most of the undocumented immigrants coming to this country are still Latinos. So 23%. I mean, I got to check the numbers that you're telling me. But
that's a DHS.
It's just. Well, it's just a number, and it corresponds to the percentage of Latinos in the population. But again, I think that the most important thing for me tonight is just to say that there's no crisis. It's a manufactured crisis by President Trump. He's afraid of you. He's afraid of Fox News. And he wants to spend $5 billion for a wall that we don't need.
Is there anything, let's say Trump says, I'm going to give amnesty to all 12 million illegal immigrants in the United States, but you're going to give me the money for the wall. You'd still be against the wall?
Let me quote former Congressman Luis Gutierrez. At some point, he said that it was like paying a ransom for a kidnapping. So,
come on. Kidnapping?
When you have a wall that has become a racist symbol, when you have a wall that has become a racist symbol, It is very difficult for anyone
Jorge,
to
you are so
support
much
building.
better. Jorge, you are so much better than that. People have walls.
It's a symbol of
walls have
racism.
existed
Laura, you know
throughout
it's a
time.
symbol of
Okay?
racism.
A wall that has a door for so you
President
know who's
Trump
coming
made
in
that
and who's leaving. That's a wall that exists. So we don't hate everybody on the other side. We love our own people, and we want to welcome in people in an orderly fashion. That's all it is. It's not a negative thing.
But
it can be, but this is not. Jorge, I love having you on.
It is a racist symbol. When President Trump said that Mexican immigrants were criminals and rapists, and he said the wall can stop that, he made that
we can't
a
recreate
racist
the
symbol.
wheel. But are all walls around the houses of Democrats and tech titans, are those racist too? In areas where there's a high minority population, are those racist?
No, I'm saying that Trump created the wall as a racist symbol.
All right, guys, thank you. Jorge, thank you so much. And now here to respond, two men on the front lines of the border crisis. I should have referenced this. Hector Garza, Border Patrol agent in Texas, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, and Hudspeth County Sheriff Arvin West community, also been ravaged by drugs coming across the border. All right, we're going to get right to it, guys. We went long with Jorge. Hector, let's start with you. You just heard what Jorge said. The border communities are the safest. And a lot of the Border Patrol agents say a wall is absolutely not needed. Your response?
Well, first of all, Jorge Ramos does not represent the views of the Hispanic communities. He likes to go on these shows and talk for Hispanics and Latino here in the United States. He does not represent our views, and he represents Univision, and he represents himself. Now, as Border Patrol agents, we have over 52% of Hispanics on the workforce, and we do support a barrier. We're asking for help for the safety of the American people and for the safety of our Border Patrol agents.
Well, Sheriff, let's get to you. Look, it's always hard when you're trying to talk to someone or debate someone who just says right off the bat, this is racist. Then there's nowhere to go with the argument. And I actually do like debating people on things because I think you can find some common ground, I think, if you can agree to some basic facts. But if right off the bat, the wall is called racist, there's nothing really you could do, nothing we can say. But what do you say with your own experience in your community in Pima County about what illegal immigration has done to the people, to the businesses, and to the crime rate?
Well, first of all, it's Hudspeth County. I'm next door to El Paso County. And when you hear these politicians get up there and talk about, you know, these metropolitan areas are safe along the border, they're safe because there's walls, there's fences built there. And the overflow of that is what we have to deal with. So yeah, when you get representatives from El Paso sitting there saying the walls, we don't need the wall, but they don't, because they've already got the wall in their communities. It's the outer lying areas where we deal with it. And you know, you bring up the issue about the wall on the entire southwestern border. In some places it's going to be a good idea. In some places it's going to work. But there's areas throughout the southwest border that it's virtually impossible to put a fence up. You get to the big mountains, these canyons and stuff like that, it's not going to work.
Yeah, but the president's never talked about that. Yeah, the president's never, I mean, he's never said you put him on the mountains or in the Rio Grande River. And excuse me for putting you in Pima County. Obviously, I knew you were in Hudspeth, so sorry about that. We were referencing another sheriff earlier. But the thing about this, what I don't understand is just a few years ago, pretty much everyone agreed we needed to do something here. And now, because President Trump's in office, it's not Barack Obama, but President Trump's in office, or it's not Bill Clinton, who did Operation Gatekeeper, because I was down there reporting on it back in 1996 in San Diego. They all knew that that was working, guys. So what in the heck has changed, except we have, Hector, a lot of family units crossing the border and drug cartels that are further enriched by this scam at the border?
Well, back in 2015, Jorge Ramos went to Laredo, Texas, and I gave him a border tour. And Jorge Ramos called it a humanitarian crisis that was ongoing at the border. And things are really bad nowadays with the caravans. Now, we have this big caravan in the California border up there in Tijuana. Now, we have another caravan in Central America that's forming already. But what people are not reporting is that we have a silent caravan that has been coming through the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, and where our agents are apprehending anywhere from 500 to 1,000 illegal aliens a day. Now, what's happening with all those illegal aliens that are coming into our country is that we're also catching a lot of dangerous drugs and a lot of dangerous criminals. Now, President Trump did not say that all migrants were murderers and rapists. However, as Border Patrol agents, we do arrest a lot of illegal aliens that have criminal histories, that are murderers and rapists and kidnappers, and they commit very serious crimes. The state of Texas has done an amazing job in keeping those statistics, and they talked about them yesterday here in McAllen, Texas.
Sheriff, finally with you, I threw out those statistics that are shocking between 2011 and the most recent year, I think it was 2018. They're shocking how many crimes have been committed. And a lot of these are repeat offenders, Sheriff. And Jorge, I'm glad he came on the show, but he just seemed to blow that all off as, oh, they're not representative. But it's thousands and thousands of crimes.
Well, Hector's absolutely right, and we deal with this on a daily basis when it comes through here. But on the same token, what about the immigrants that are coming across, for example, the desert? Because I live out in the desert, and the immigrants that are coming across the border out there, we're picking up dead bodies pretty regular. We picked up more this past year than we've ever have, because they get out in the desert, the coyotes leave them to fend for themselves, and they end up dying out there. Where's the humanitarian cry on that? Where's Ramos on that? And Hector is right. We are seeing a lot more criminal aliens that have committed criminal crimes or have committed crimes in the past that are repeat offenders that are coming back into the country.
I mean, we have children dying, we have adults dying, we have American citizens dying, and we have an environmental situation. We have diseases in the encampments on the other side of the border. Doctors are documenting that. How someone doesn't call this a crisis, for the life of me, I don't understand that. You both gave us important perspective tonight. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And coming up, tipping flight attendants and Pauly Walnuts, all in the Friday Follies with Raymond Arroyo next.
Chicken?
Chicken!
Chicken!
That's right, Candace. New chicken creations from Starkist.
Buffalo-style chicken in a pouch. Bold choice, Charlie.
Just tear, eat,
and go.
Try all of my chicken creations.
Chicken!
Finding the right vacation rental can take hours. Luckily, there's Home to Go. With Home to Go, you can search hundreds of websites and millions of offers. Fast. Whew. Home to Go. It's the world's largest vacation rental search engine.
Since you're heading off to school, I got you this Brita.
Dad, I just got a Zero Water.
But we always use Brita.
Its 2-stage filter doesn't compare to Zero Water's 5-stage. This meter shows how much stuff or dissolved solids gets left behind. Our tap water is 220.
Ooh.
Brita is 110.
Seriously?
But Zero Water...
Let me guess. 0?
Yep, that's how I know that it is the purest tasting water.
I need to find the receipt for that.
Oh yeah, you do.
Wireless for $15 a month. That's not right.
It's right, all right. Finger dipping? That's not right.
That dip look good.
Oh, that does look good.
You gotta try this. That's so good.
That's not right.
Neither is the way you get wireless. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right. For easy, online, and just $15 a month. Get your plan today at mintmobile.com.
So here's the deal. Somewhere along the way, Western boots got too expensive. And the styles? Well, Tecovas fixed that. We make handcrafted, high-quality Western boots from the finest materials for a fair price. With free shipping, returns, and exchanges, and service that would make our grandmothers proud. From comfort to quality to price, value is one of our values. Find your pair only at Tecovas.com.
Tired of waiting for it to kick in? For a rapid boost in nitric oxide, choose Ageless Male tonight.
Get great deals on great gear at Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's Cabin Fever sale. Like savings of 25% on XPS and Cabela's tackle bags. And save $20 on this Bass Pro 10-bearing spinning combo. Your adventure starts here.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Travis Stork, and if you've ever seen me on television, you already know my passion is helping people live longer, healthier lives. Did you know that 1 out of 3 Americans suffers from high blood pressure? And the older you get, the greater the risk. So I was excited when I came across the Zona Plus. It's a drug-free, software-controlled handheld device which uses the proven science of isometric therapy to help lower blood pressure naturally.
As a physician who's experienced great results with the Zona Plus, I would not hesitate to recommend it to anyone.
I've been using it now for about 1.5 years and I absolutely love it.
If you've been recently diagnosed with high blood pressure or you've been dealing with it for years, you could benefit from adding the Zona Plus to your treatment plan.
And with the company's fantastic 90-day money-back guarantee, backed by a full refund of the purchase price, there's no risk. You have everything to gain by giving Zona Plus a try for 90 days. Call now at 800-311-6730 or visit us online at zonaplus.com.
It's Friday, and that means it's time for... Oh, it's Friday Folly. So, question, should we be tipping flight attendants, a Yuletide home invasion, and bada bing? We have an anniversary to celebrate. Well, joining us now with all the details, Raymond Arroyo. He's a Fox News contributor, of course, and New York Times bestselling author. The upcoming book, Will Wilder 3, The Amulet of Power. Okay, Raymond, an airline now wants us to tip flight attendants. First of all, I think flight attendants should make triple whatever they're making because they put up.
They do a lot.
They put up with people with...
But wait, we're going to get to all that. We're going to get to all that.
All right. But what is this about with the tipping?
Well,
we can't even get like a package of peanuts anymore, but you have to tip folks.
Frontier Airlines is instituting this policy where when you order drinks, beverages, snacks, you can tip the attendants. Now, I realize flight attendants, they do a lot, Laura,
they do
as
a
you
lot,
mentioned.
especially on Frontier.
Well, they deal with ornery passengers like this. Hey, bud, you do that to me and I'll knock you flat.
You stay out of this. Come on.
You get the hell up. Get the hell up.
Come on. Bring it up. You don't know what the story is.
I don't care what the story is. No one's heard of baby.
I had one too many Jack and Cokes. Yeah. Well, they perform in coordinated safety demonstration.
Each seat is provided with a seatbelt. To fasten, push ends together. Tighten seatbelts by pulling loose ends.
And Laura, some even do a full floor show like this guy.
Seatbelt tighten low across your hips and wear it anytime you're seated. This aircraft has 6 emergency exits, 2 forward exit doors, 2 overwing window exits, and 2
But here's the problem.
Is this aerobics?
Here's the problem.
That's Southwest. It has to be. They're always
they do jokes, they dance,
Yeah.
they do the whole thing.
I don't
They're
blame
floor
them.
entertainment. Look, I love these flight attendants. They go through a lot. You and I see what they do in the air. However, the airlines have now charged us for what once was given to you, your bags, your snacks. Pretty soon we're going to have to drop quarters in a little tiny toilet to get in. I don't like this. I think they're bleeding the passengers, and they're already charging so much for these flights. The flight attendant should come for free.
With all of the money they've made in the airlines in recent years, I have an idea. Give your people more of a raise.
Right.
Okay, because we're paying a lot for air transportation.
Exactly.
The flight attendants... I like tipping big. It's a good thing. My mother was a waitress, so I'm always tipping. Big tippers, you'll get it back upstairs.
Not all the airlines will allow tips, but some do.
Hey, slip them a 20.
All right. Laura, now this week marks the 20th anniversary of the landmark HBO series, The Sopranos. It is easily the most influential and groundbreaking series of the last 40 years or so. The cast reunited this week, and the creator, David Chase, spilled the beans on that mysterious ending. You'll remember Tony Soprano took his family to a diner, and the screen went black. Well, he tells writers of a new book called The Soprano Sessions, quote, I think I had that death scene around 2 years before the end. I remember talking with Sopranos writer and executive producer Mitch Burgess about it, but it was slightly different. Tony was going to be called to a meeting with Johnny Sack in Manhattan, and he was going to go back through the Lincoln Tunnel for this meeting, and it was going to go black there, and you never saw him again as he was headed back. The theory being that something bad happens to him at the meeting, but we didn't do that. Now, what they did do was go to black in the diner, but it's clear here, Laura, he envisioned a death scene, so the mystery has been solved.
Do you even know the song that was playing?
Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of people criticized the ending.
Well, it was because it was kind of an odd ending, and it was open-ended. Don't Stop Believing. That's right.
Don't Stop Believing.
That's right.
All right, solved. It was one of the greatest.
Okay,
ever.
your favorite
All right.
scene in The Sopranos, Laura.
Okay, my favorite scene, the greatest series ever made.
We love this series.
Ever made. Everyone's trying to copy it. None of them can, okay? No one can. David Chase is brilliant. And no one wanted it, by the way. No one wanted it. HBO finally took it. So my favorite scene is when Christopher, the nephew, got into some trouble with some drugs and some booze. So Paulie Walnuts and company had to take matters into their own hands. It's called The Intervention.
We are here to talk about you killing yourself with drugs, not my personality.
That's right.
I'm gonna kill myself? The way you are you gonna have a heart attack by the time you're 50?
Oh, sit down.
You're talking to the boss here.
Good. Maybe someone will smack some god sense into him.
Great, my own mother. You.
Over his head. Oh, no, we need the chair.
And they broke the chair over
the chair over his head. Oh, hey, we're leaving all that stuff
let me tell you and I have similar taste in humor. My favorite moment is when Livia Soprano, his mother in the first season, is dropping a friend off at her house. This was classic.
There's my star ledger. Thanks.
Oh, this street. It's another pain in the...
Livia's going a little batty at that point, forgot to put the car in reverse and ran her friend over.
I think she did it just the way she wanted it to.
Maybe she did.
Okay, so this series was great and sustains people still. I'm thinking about it. A lot of bawdy stuff in it, but why? There's another point.
Well, first of all, it was a family drama. First time they put the mob in the setting of a family drama, and that drew men and women, which David Chase brilliantly conceived. Then there were these haunting moments that were never explained, Laura, like this. Paulie Walnuts going into the Bada Bing, the strip club, and there on the bar is the Virgin Mary. He looks, he sees her, then he never sees her again. It's grace in the midst of this sin, and you see them battling back and forth over it.
Or his conscience.
And you know, the wages of sin are death. We saw a lot of death in this series. Now, HBO did a big thing this week where they gave anyone who tweeted out their account, they offered mobster nicknames to.
Oh,
so we thought it'd be fun to give each other mobster nicknames.
Okay, your nickname. Okay, I was trying to make a play on words. Okay. Your No-Ray Arroyo.
Not Romano, Arroyo.
No-Ray Arroyo. And I say No-Ray, I almost said Romano, because
why No-Ray?
Look at Raymond's milky white complexion. It looks redder on TV, but it's white.
I never go in the sun.
He has no wrinkles. He's so vain. He has no wrinkles. Yes, you are, Rebecca. No wrinkles, and a ray of sunshine comes through when you're outside at a lunch or something. Raymond's like, we've got to go inside now. It's hot now. The sun is terrible.
The sun is your enemy, ladies.
Oh my God! So
okay, now my nickname for Laura. You've heard of, you know, there was Vinny the Bull and Johnny the Neck.
Chin.
How about Laura the Mouth? It's the perfect mobster nickname.
Thank you.
Bring in Laura the Mouth.
My enemies will love it. Thank you.
Why do they all talk? Why do all the old Italians talk like they've been inhaling gun?
I don't know, but I love it. All right. So on Tuesday.
Yes, this upcoming week.
Big day. The Laura Ingraham podcast, Raymond's My Partner in Crime, starts, and it's going to be a series of episodes throughout the week. All you do is go to Podcast One. It's going to be culture, family, relationships, fun. I think you're going to learn and laugh a lot during this podcast. It's going to be really fun. So Tuesday it all starts. Just go to Podcast One or go to your iTunes, your Apple iTunes podcast, little purple thing on your iPhone, easy to find. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Tuesday, the fun begins. All right, the arbiter is next. Two lawyers make their case on set right here. I have the gavel.
America's News Headquarters, I'm Marianne Rafferty. A New York Times report claims the FBI investigated if President Trump was secretly working for Russia. The report says the Bureau opened an inquiry after the president fired FBI Director James Comey in May of 2017. Former officials close to the inquiry say investigators were concerned the president's behavior might have posed a threat to national security. And a federal judge in California indicating he will likely block new rules from the Trump administration allowing employers to opt out of contraceptive coverage over religious or moral objections. Judge Haywood Gilliam said the move by the administration could strip birth control coverage from a substantial number of women. He says he will make his ruling before the policy goes into effect on Monday. I'm Marianne Rafferty. Now back to the Ingraham Angle.
It's time for the arbiter. Yeah, court's in session where two attorneys argue a case and then I make a final ruling, and this is a really big gavel. It's bigger than Nancy's. All right, joining me now is Gail Trotter, attorney and spokeswoman for the Judicial Crisis Network, and Debbie Hines, former prosecutor. Thank you both for being here tonight. It's great to have you both on. All right, this is a really interesting case. Our first case, a Latina sorority at UVA was suspended. I'm thinking, was it drinking? Was it? They were suspended after the school said they were hazing members, not by, not the alcohol thing and not by beating them, but by requiring the would-be sorority sisters to study for more than 25 hours a week. Now, the sorority is fighting back, and they launched a federal lawsuit against the university for violating its First Amendment rights. Now, those are the facts, Gail. There's an operative state statute, which we'll put up on the screen. And in part, it said it shall be unlawful to haze so as to cause bodily injury any student at any college or university. Any person found guilty will be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. And for the purposes of the statute, it includes intentionally endangering the health or safety of a student or students, or inflicting bodily injury on a student or students in connection with the purpose of the initiation. It goes on and on, but that's the operative language. So.
Well, I'm a proud graduate of Mr. Jefferson's University.
I am too. Law school, but not undergrad.
Law school and undergrad for me.
Show off.
And I think that this case is a complete embarrassment to UVA. We're talking about that anti-hazing statute, and it doesn't apply. It's not even close in this case because it talks about instances where a student organization endangers the health or safety of a student. And for any UVA administrator to say that studying 25 hours a week when you're a college student endangers the health or safety of a student is just inconceivable. And it's unbelievable that any administrator in this situation would think that. And if so, then they clearly did not study enough when they went to college, or they wouldn't indulge in this rank stupidity.
God, I needed someone to make me study 25 hours a week. Debbie.
Okay, so I didn't go to UVA, but I'm a proud member of a sorority, of a college sorority. And so what I would say is, although my personal opinions are different, if I were representing UVA, what I would say is it's kind of a case of 90% versus 99% versus 1%. So meaning, I think in 99% of the cases, there wouldn't be any emotional or mental or any physical harm. There's obviously not going to be any physical harm as opposed to emotional and mental harm. But I will say that there are students who have emotional or mental issues that are attending college for which that maybe this requirement would be an endangerment to their well-being. Obviously, for the vast majority of students, it wouldn't be, but the university has an obligation and a duty to protect all of its students, not just the vast majority.
Hazing means to recklessly or intentionally endanger the health of these pledges. Rebuttal.
Right. Well, clearly studying is what you're at college to do. And if you were full-time employed, you would be working at least 40 hours a week. And even if you take into account that you're going to class, if you add that to 25 hours of studying, that's way under what
Debbie,
a
your
college
response
student should do.
So I'm saying it's not that it's excessive, and I agree with that. If you're computing it out, it comes out to less than 4 hours a week. But what I'm saying is there are students who come from high school environments where it's an unstructured environment, and it's unstructured for that reason, that some of them can't cope.
So my ruling in this case, and I have to say it's not even close, is for Ms. Trotter. But there could be kids who don't want to study, and for them it's painful. But that's not a reckless or intentional infliction of bodily harm or on the health and safety. I don't think I'd make that case. All right, on to the next case, though. It's a fa-la-la-la lawsuit. Well, a California family is suing Lifetime Network after it used their holiday card in a Christmas movie without permission. Then an actor in that movie put up the picture and made this comment. Watch.
Please don't put those up, babe. They ruin the whole aesthetic of the place.
I like them. They're festive.
They're ugly.
Well, and the photo is in the background. I guess you see it in the, there's an ugly picture. What's the deal, Gail?
Well, just imagine if it was your family and a rich, powerful corporation was targeting you in this way. Not only do they not have a legal right to have that prominently and conspicuously displayed in their movie, but they also make this disparaging comment about this beautiful family with a mother, a father, a child, and they had no right to include that, and certainly it was disparaging of the family.
Debbie, real quick.
So it all hinges on whether there's an expectation of privacy, and we've already found out that privacy differs everywhere. So I think that if it was something that was on social media, and that's how Lifetime found it, it's not really any expectation of privacy that this family has. So they would just be clear out of luck.
Ruling Debbie wins that one because I believe that was on one of those social media websites. I think the expectation of privacy diminished, but we need to know more, and they'll find out more in the case argument, whether it was on Snapfish or Shutterfly, and the operative language of those internal contracts matter. But right now, I give it to Debbie. Great segment, you guys. Thanks so much. Up next, lessons in leadership on the 30th anniversary of Reagan's farewell address from Craig Shirley. He'll be with us. And a California TV reporter who says he was snubbed by CNN because I shared with them. Watch.
As a sign of the times in this debate on the shutdown, CNN asked if KUSI would provide a reporter to offer our local view of the debate, especially to learn if the wall works in San Diego.
KUSI offered our own Dan Plant, who's reported many times that the wall is not an issue here. In fact, most officials believe it is effective. The issue we face is the migrants and the debate over their treatment.
Now, knowing this, CNN declined to have us on their programs, which often present the wall as not required in other places, like the stretch of the Texas border the president visited earlier today. They didn't like what they heard from us.
Just some background for you.
James Earl Jones needs to get his voiceover back. This is CNN. Joining me now exclusively, KUSI reporter Dan Plant, who does a great job. Dan, I've seen you reporting for a long time. What can you tell me about the discussion that you all had with CNN, and did they explain their sudden lack of interest in working with you?
Well, you know, they actually did a response, and good evening, by the way. How you doing?
Great to see you.
From San Diego, America's finest city. Yeah, so here's what happened. You know, every morning in news department, we talk about what we're going to do for the day. We talk about the local news. We talk about the national news. And the only affiliate we have is CNN because we're an independently family-owned station here in San Diego that likes to tell the truth. So when they called up and said, hey, we would like one of your reporters to sort of fill in the gaps, we're doing a story about how the border wall really doesn't work and they're not that effective. Well, we got back to them. We said, hey, we'd love to do a little talk back with you because I'm the reporter on the border. I've been there for many, many years, as you know, and made friends with a lot of the Border Patrol agents, personal friends at this point. But when we called back and said, look, we'd be more than happy to provide Dan Plant for you, but he's going to tell you what the Border Patrol agents tell him, and that is that the border walls work.
You actually interview people. It cuts against the narrative that CNN is putting out there, that the border wall is basically racist, it doesn't work, it's a waste of money, no one wants it. It worked at Imperial Beach in San Diego. That whole area changed for the better once that significant barrier went up. But they said today in a response, and I should read it to be fair here, they said, we called several local stations to book someone for a show. We didn't end up booking any of them. This happens every day, many times a day. We did, however, book a reporter from KUSI for a story on immigration and the border wall in November. This is a non-story. Hashtag facts first. Quick sum up.
Well, the quick summary is that we were saying things that they didn't want to hear. We were telling them the truth. What we were going to tell them was, hey, these things work. And from our experience here, from being 20 years here in San Diego as a news reporter, covering many, many border stories down there and talking to the people who work on the border, that the border fences work. And that is not the narrative that they wanted to hear.
Thank you for doing your reporting. And frankly, I don't believe CNN's explanation on this at all. It just doesn't work.
Well, we just try to tell the truth, Laura. We just try to tell the truth.
All right, thank you so much.
No agenda here. Yeah.
All right, Dan, thanks so much for being here.
All right.
I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here.
President Reagan, wow. Well, today marks the 30th anniversary of President Reagan's farewell address to the nation. The great communicator mentions a few things in that address that our nation and our lawmakers should keep in mind. Here to explain, great biographer of Reagan, Craig Shirley, presidential historian, of course, biographer extraordinaire. Craig, hearing the president speak of walls and how if it has to have a wall, it has to have a big door. So many people have seized on that part of his farewell address and said, see, Reagan would be for, mass migration and would be against what Trump's doing. He didn't really like the idea of a wall. What about that?
Laura, there are some things that are moral impossibilities, and the idea that Ronald Reagan would endorse lawlessness is one of those things. It's a moral impossibility. When he was talking about those walls and he was talking about that city, that was 30 years ago. He was referring to people who were fleeing communist oppression in Southeast Asia, in Cuba, and Nicaragua, and El Salvador. Those were many of the people who were coming here. Those are political refugees who are quite different from economic refugees that are crossing the border every day. So you're comparing eggs, oranges and lemons here. The refugees of the 1980s are not the refugees
different from
of
the
today.
Economic refugees of today, who are it's a completely different dynamic and different world. But Craig,
sure.
he talked in this speech a lot about young people and the need to educate young people. Let's watch.
Taught very directly what it means to be an American. And we absorbed almost in the air a love of country. Younger parents aren't sure that an unambivalent appreciation of America is the right thing to teach modern children. We've got to teach history based not on what's in fashion, but what's important. Why the Pilgrims came here, who Jimmy Doolittle was, and what those 30 seconds over Tokyo meant. If we forget what we did, we won't know who we are.
Oh my gosh, Craig, when I hear that, I think, what would he have thought about tearing down statues, calling the framers racist, all the things you hear kids mouth coming out of public schools and at universities today? You can close it out.
No, he would have been appalled. He would have been appalled at this tearing down of statues and the ignorance that is so widespread in public schools today. Reagan, part of Reagan's appeal, a lot of his appeal, was that he spoke to young Americans. He spoke about opportunity. He spoke about the future. When he was reelected in 1984, he got 59% of the overall vote, but he got 65% of the under 30 vote. When he left office in 1989, January of '89, his overall approval rating was 69%, but among voters under 30, it was 77% among voters under 30. Some of his most important policy speeches were given on American college campuses at Eureka and Notre Dame and George Washington University and others. So he was the last president since John Kennedy who could go onto American college campuses without fear of protest or reprisals.
Well, Barack Obama didn't have much trouble on college campuses, but certainly the last Republican president. Well, George Bush
yes, the
could
last
go,
Republican, but we're talking about Reagan tonight.
Yeah.
Obama's an exception, but we're talking about Reagan tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. Craig, it's a day that I remember very well, and we are both of the Reagan Revolution generation, and I like how he said at the end, all in all, not bad. Basically, we did it for
diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and decreased appetite. These can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
To help lower my A1C, I choose Trulicity to activate my within.
Ask your doctor about once-weekly Trulicity.
It's time for the last bite. House Democrats apparently have nothing better to do than stage political stunts. This time they delivered trash from national parks to the White House.
Mr. Trump, here's your trash.
What we need is for President Trump to wake up and smell the coffee cups and the diapers and the burrito wrappers and the trash that is piling up. And soon we'll have enough of it to build a wall, perhaps.
Well, it's good to see that the Democrats are getting creative about building the wall and have finally found gainful employment. Maybe they can help out the custodial staff, the Capitol, during the shutdown. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team take it from here. Have a good weekend, everyone.
This is a Fox News alert just minutes away from the record books. It will be the longest partial government shutdown in history. And what's different this time around is just how far we seem to be from any real resolution. Now, not that there isn't hope. Democrats and Republicans did get together and pass a bill to pay back government workers at some point. But in a week where the president all but guaranteed a grand bargain involving DACA and a possible declaration of a national emergency, either of which could have probably ended the impasse, he's now backtracked from both possibilities. And Congress has tracked its way out of town. Literally, almost everybody's gone home for the weekend. But newly minted GOP Congressman Dan Crenshaw is here live. Plus, the Pima County, Arizona sheriff, he says he coined the term medieval solution, the phrase that a lot of Democrats are using to describe a wall. But now for the first time, the sheriff is here to say President Trump's border wall makes sense to him. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We begin tonight with correspondent Kristen Fisher. She is following the latest on the partial government shutdown from the White House. Good evening, Kristen.
Hi, Shannon. Well, we're now 59 minutes away from this becoming the longest shutdown in the history of the United States. Both the House and Senate have already adjourned, so that discouraging milestone is going to be met, and it's happening at the very end of the same day that those 800,000 or so federal employees missed their first paycheck. Today, Congress passed a shockingly bipartisan bill guaranteeing back pay for all the furloughed federal employees, and President Trump says he will sign it. But that's where the compromise ends. Speaker Pelosi left Capitol Hill for the weekend with these parting words for President Trump.
It's again a temper tantrum, as was mentioned, a temper tantrum by the president. I'm a mother of 5, grandmother of 9. I know a temper tantrum when I see one.
President Trump may not be backing down from his demand to fund the wall, but he did dial back his threat to declare a national emergency. After days of making it sound like a declaration might be imminent, today he pumped the brakes at a White House roundtable on border security.
So what we're not looking to do right now is national emergency.
He also acknowledged the very likely possibility that a national emergency declaration could be overturned in court.
What will happen? I'll be sued. It'll be brought to the Ninth Circuit. And maybe even though the wording is unambiguous, just like with the travel ban, it'll be appealed to the Ninth Circuit, and we'll probably lose there too, and then hopefully we'll win in the Supreme Court.
Besides, he got pushback from congressional Republicans who didn't like the idea of tapping a $14 billion disaster relief fund meant to help California, Puerto Rico, and Texas after wildfires and hurricanes. Texas Senator John Cornyn said today, quote, "I'll tell you that I will oppose any reprogramming of Harvey disaster funds. We worked very hard to make sure that the victims of Hurricane Harvey, their concerns are addressed, and Texas is able to rebuild." But the state's lieutenant governor said last night after meeting with the president at the border that he was all for it.
I'm not concerned about that. He will take care of us on the hurricane relief, as will Senator Cornyn and Cruz, and we will get the money to build the wall.
And today, Senator Lindsey Graham repeated his plea, Mr. President, declare a national emergency now, build a wall now. So big picture here. Senator Graham's grand bargain is dead. The president's national emergency declaration is on ice, and Congress has left town, and they're no closer to a compromise. So, Shannon, here we are now, 57 minutes from this becoming the longest shutdown in history, and we still have no idea how or when the government is going to be reopened.
Right you are, but we will discuss the possibilities. Kristen Fisher, thank you very much from the White House tonight. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, critics of the wall have been using the word medieval to describe it.
Donald Trump wants a medieval border wall and is trying to force us to pay a $5 billion plus ransom note.
There's no reason to have a medieval response to a 21st century problem.
The president campaigned, you will recall, on building a medieval-style border wall, and of course, the promise was that Mexico would pay for it.
Okay, let's bring in Texas Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw and the Pima County Sheriff in Arizona, Mark Napier, who credits himself with first coining that phrase, the medieval comparison, a couple years ago, and he may have had a change of heart. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
All right, Sheriff, I want to start with you because we had that little montage there of a number of folks using medieval to describe the wall in a disparaging way. You've used it. You may have launched this whole idea of using it. Have you changed your mind?
Well, Shannon, I've never changed my mind about the utility of physical barriers to secure our border. That's never been the issue for me. 2 years ago, all we were hearing is we're going to build a wall, and the inference was that it would be all 2,000 miles of our international border. Well, that's simply not feasible. And to simply build a wall and walk away from it would, in fact, be a medieval solution to what is a very complex and dynamic problem. Over the past couple of years, the president has evolved his position greatly. In his address on Tuesday night, he talked about technology, human resources, and physical barriers. And we're no longer talking about the idea of securing the border all 2,000 miles with a 30-foot high concrete wall. So this has evolved. The president's listened to the experts, and I have always fully supported physical barriers because they make sense. They have great utility from an operational and tactical standpoint in a lot of places, a lot of locations on our border.
Yeah, you're there on the front line, so you would have a much better assessment than most of us. Now, Congressman, first of all, I want to mention that you were among those who has said to the federal government, withhold my pay for now while we're figuring this all out. You want to be in the same place that federal employees who are now,
I think that's only right.
you know, they're on the receiving end of these decisions. So I wanted to note that, but also I want to read something because you have been doing a lot of debating this week with folks about who think the wall is not going to work or there are problems with it. This is quoting a Virginia Tech medieval professor, says this, the headline, Trump says medieval walls worked. They didn't. They say, calling the proposed 700 to 1,200 mile border wall medieval is deeply misleading because walls in the actual European Middle Ages simply did not work the way Trump apparently thinks they did. If anything, their true function may speak to Trump's intentions. Poor tools of defense, medieval walls had more to do with reassuring those who lived inside them than with dividing self from others.
It's an interesting academic perspective, but then we we're affronted with reality, right? And so they are meant to make people inside feel better. It's like Trump said, you know, we care about the people we love inside, and that's why we have these. And a physical barrier is a part of a multifaceted solution. And I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal today. It's about 234 miles of physical barriers. That's what the plan calls for. It's about 75 extra immigration judges on the border to enhance the capacity of enrolling people here. It's about 750 more Border Patrol agents. It's more detention beds so that we can house all the families that are coming across. Remember, the reason this is a crisis, too, is because there's far more families actually coming across, far more women and children than we ever had before. That's why it's a humanitarian crisis. That's why President Obama himself, standing in front of the White House, had once said it is a humanitarian crisis on the border. And we are talking about technology. We're talking about more technology to detect drugs coming into ports of entry. This isn't some medieval solution. It is an actual, realistic, reasonable solution. It's multifaceted in nature. And the funny part is it's actually what Democrats often talk about on the House floor. They're saying, no, it's not just physical barriers, it's all these other things. We should have a mix. And I say, don't you realize that's actually our plan? Like, what are you arguing against? Don't argue against an idea that doesn't exist. It's like the sheriff said. Originally, there was talk about a grand 2,000-mile border wall. That doesn't work. It doesn't work in a lot of places in Texas. Okay, we have multifaceted solutions. That's what this is about. The politics of it have gotten really ugly.
Well, and speaking of politics, Sheriff, I want to play something from one of the top Democrats in the Senate, Dick Durbin, talking about the efficacy of these walls and get your reaction.
Well, listen, there isn't a single fence or wall that you build that can't be overcome with a tunnel or a ladder or some other approach. Let's be real about it. That's why we have insisted on the Democratic side of being smart when it comes to border security.
All right, I want you both to weigh in on that, but Sheriff, you first.
The senator needs to come down to my part of the world. Physical barriers do work. They've always worked. We have vehicle intrusion barriers in my county. They have great efficacy. Now, of course, we're always going to have any physical barrier backed up with technology and human resources because the drug cartels have infinite resources. They are entrepreneurs. As we plug one hole in it, they're going to try another. So they'll always try to defeat whatever we place there. So they'll always have to be backed up by technology and human resources. We'll have to move human resources closer to the border. So it's a flawed argument, and I would invite the Democrats to quit using the term a medieval solution. I might have coined that phrase. It is no longer applicable. What we have, as Congressman Crenshaw absolutely correctly pointed out, is a multifaceted approach to a very dynamic and challenging problem. That's what we're talking about today, and that has great efficacy, and it will work.
Yeah, and Congressman, in your piece that you wrote today, you talk about the fact that you don't just abandon things because there may be some possible ways to challenge them.
Right.
But
and we have about 400,000 people crossing the border. That's just apprehended every year. So that doesn't include all the people that probably cross. So the idea is to mitigate this to the best extent possible. Just because somebody can put forth a ton of resources to try and maybe dig under it or use special equipment and really special training to try and get over a large wall the way this is, just because that's possible, and just because some could maybe do it, doesn't mean it's not an enormous mitigating factor for the vast majority of people. And the solution is certainly not, well, just have nothing so they can easily walk across. I mean, that's not a solution at all. And you know, and I almost have to laugh saying it, right? Because it sounds crazy. Like, of course we would have to have something there to mitigate it, just like the sheriff is saying. And I wish Democrats wouldn't just dismiss it in this kind of smug manner, and it's without any evidence, without any reasoning behind it. The idea is to dismiss this as an obviously stupid idea. Of course it's not a stupid idea. And in fact, I don't really have a problem with the idea of medieval solutions. The point is that it's been around for a long time because these things do actually work. You know, and they're part of the solution. They're not the only solution, but part of it.
I want to ask you, too, The Hill reporting today that the White House had looked at $13.9 billion in funding approved by Congress as part of a disaster response bill to use for building the wall. My understanding is you've had some conversations with Mick Mulvaney about that, because there have been objections across the aisle from both sides about that possibility.
Of course, especially as I'm from Houston, and Harvey relief funds are a big priority of mine. We couldn't possibly support money being taken away from that. So, if we do get to this point where he's declaring a national emergency, we have to be very careful about that. I really want to see Congress come to a solution here. I think there is plenty of room for political negotiation. Let's keep in mind that Republicans have come down from the President Trump's giant wall to down to 200 miles of it, a very reasonable amount, come down from $25 billion to $5.7 billion. We are negotiating, but we have to have a partner in negotiations. These are not unreasonable conversations to have.
Well, we'll see where those conversations go, if they continue, if those conversations are being had. Congressman, thank you. Sheriff, thank you both very much for serving our country in your different ways and for weighing in on this tonight. Great to have you both.
Thank you.
All right, a new migrant caravan is forming in northern Honduras, and it's set to depart next Tuesday at 5 a.m. local time. We know that because that's what a social media invite circulating in Honduras says is going to happen. Mexico is reportedly taking this very seriously, planning to deploy guards at 370 border crossings. Thousands of members of the last caravan are still waiting in Tijuana, Mexico, to begin their U.S. asylum applications. Breaking tonight, the new Republican governor of Florida is suspending the Broward County sheriff amid mounting scrutiny of his department's response to the deadly shooting at a Parkland high school last year. 17 people were killed. Trace Gallagher is on the case for us tonight. Trace.
Shannon, Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel has been telling his staff this week he expected to be removed from office, and he was right. Governor Ron DeSantis formally suspended Israel, citing his leadership during both the Fort Lauderdale airport shooting in 2017 and last year's mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School that killed 17. Quoting, "These incidents demonstrate Sheriff Israel's repeated incompetence and neglect of duty. The families of the victims deserve accountability." In turn, Governor DeSantis named former Coral Springs Police Sergeant Gregory Toney as the new Broward County Sheriff. It's interesting that Sheriff Toney comes from the very same police department that ran inside Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High, while Broward deputies took shelter outside, even though Broward County deputies knew where the shooter was. In fact, there is surveillance video and dispatch audio that shows Broward County School Resource Deputy Scott Peterson taking shelter despite seeing the shooter in the stairwell of the building. Parents of students who died at the high school say their kids just needed a little help. Watch.
My daughter died on the 3rd floor of MSD, running down the hallway from an active shooter. One more second and she makes it into the stairwell. My daughter would have lived if somebody could have just given her one more second.
Sheriff Israel later said Deputy Peterson's actions sickened him, but Israel refused to take any responsibility. And today, in response to the governor suspending him, Scott Israel said DeSantis merely fulfilled a campaign promise. Look.
I wholeheartedly reject the statements in the governor's executive order as lacking both legal merit and a valid factual basis. There was no wrongdoing on my part. I served the county honorably.
Israel vowed to fight the order in court, but the Broward Sheriff's Union applauded the governor's move and said Sheriff Israel politicized the sheriff's office for his own ambition. Shannon?
Trace, thank you very much. Police in Columbus, Ohio say they've confiscated a handgun from a kindergartner today. The child will not be charged because of his age, and an investigation is underway into how and why the child had a gun. Officials say the 6-year-old was stopped at the door after someone notified the school that the student appeared to be walking around with a heavy object in his pants. Well, the number 2 Democrat in the House breaks with Nancy Pelosi slightly on messaging about the wall. Is the border wall ineffective or immoral? Our power panel is here to debate. And who's winning the shutdown battle? According to Rush,
do any of you